Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the Morning Mindset. I hope this morning finds you well and eager to get underway for the day by putting your mind on things of truth, because it is the truth that will set us free. And we're going to do that by jumping right back into the Psalms this morning. We're in Psalm chapter 18. We're beginning in verse 25. And let me set the stage here for what we're going to read in this section of Psalm 18. We are going to read a series of responsive comparisons where the psalmist says, with this kind of person, you, God, respond this way. And I want to prepare you for a little twist near the end of this that strikes against some of how we like to think about God. And yet we have to be very careful when we come across sections of Scripture like this, because our tendency will be to let our discomfort push us or force us to redefine what God is like, rather than letting what Scripture reveals God is like to define what we believe is true. I hope that makes sense to you. Now we're going to dive right in and start reading in verse number 25 of Psalm chapter 18. And it says this: "With the merciful, you show yourself merciful. With the blameless man, you show yourself blameless. With the purified, you show yourself pure. And with the crooked, you make yourself seem tortuous." Now, do you see what I mean there by something at the very end kind of smacking you along the face and making you take notice? Because it's so opposite of the rest of the phrases, because they kind of go along with each other in kind. Merciful people, God is merciful toward them. Blameless people, God shows himself to be blameless toward them. People who are pure, he shows himself to be pure. But then it switches. And he says that with the crooked, God makes himself seem tortuous. Now for crooked there, you could substitute the word wicked or evil or unrighteous or lawbreaker, whatever terms fit the circumstance. It's someone who is against God's ways, someone who does not obey his statutes, who is not merciful, not blameless, not pure, like the other verses characterize. And he's saying with that kind of person, God can seem like a torturer in effect. And we don't like the sound of that, do we? We have to be very honest about this. To think of God torturing someone is not a pleasant thought, because we want to think of him as loving and kind. But I think we need to stop and be careful that we are not letting our sentiment get in the way of what the psalmist is trying to teach us here. He's trying to point out how big of a deal it really is to be against God's ways. Because a person is crooked, as this verse calls them, only insofar as they diverge from what is straight, which is God and his ways. So you see, God is opposed to those who are crooked because God himself is straight, if you want to think of it that way. And so when people engage in or embrace or even promote things that are contrary to God and his teachings and his ways, he is going to be naturally against them. And this verse says, even to the point of inflicting things on them intentionally, purposefully, perhaps even very painfully, it's inferred in an effort to show them the wrong of their ways. You see, God is not a torturer who does things just for no reason. If God brings tortuous kind of experience into our lives, it's to get our attention. It's to make us recognize the error of our ways, that we're going crooked. We're going away from him. And in my experience, I find that God only has to be that harsh toward me if I'm already showing myself to be obstinate, if I'm showing myself to put my hands over my ears and not be listening. So if we are those who are blameless and pure and doing our best in our heart of hearts to walk rightly before our God, we can be assured the torture is not going to come our way, because he can deal with us in more gentle ways. Join me again tomorrow.